Out of all the games that are out right now, there is one game that really managed to catch my attention. Warhammer 40k Space Marine 2. This game just looks straight up badass, and even though it's technically out already, I'll have to wait until next week to play it. So in the meantime, I decided to do something else, checking out the original Space Marine game. Now unfortunately they changed the price of the original game to 45 euros, so if you're buying it now you're pretty much getting ass blasted. But I knew I had to play this game before the second one, so I decided to go out there and look for a Steam key. But wouldn't you know it, even the key of this game still costed me 20 euros. And even though I did buy it for the sake of this video, you might want to hold off until they decide to lower the price back to what it originally was. Now after booting this game up, the first thing that was immediately noticeable and surprising to me is just how good the graphics of this game look. Just keep in mind that this game came out in 2011, and in my opinion, this game manages to look more visually appealing than a lot of games that are coming out today. And after a couple of minutes into the game, I started to realize something. Why did I not play this before? Why? Just why? This actually really reminds me of Gears of War, and I mean that in the best way possible, because Gears of War is one of my favorite and most played games of all time. The shooting, the way you move, and even the look of the characters really reminded me of those games. And after doing some research, it actually makes sense, because apparently Gears of War was actually inspired by the world of Warhammer 40k, and then later on the gameplay of this game was actually inspired by the gameplay of the original Gears of War. So it's kind of like a back and forth situation. Playing this also makes me think of that one meme where this girl is talking about how games appeal to the male fantasy.
I wrote a blog post a while ago about why I f***ing hate video games, because this is what it does. It appeals to like the male fantasy.
Uh-oh.
You're a naughty boy. Go.
I hit a woman for the first time in my life, and I'm having fun.
Well, this is it, boys. This is the ultimate male fantasy. Getting to play as a big beefy guy who doesn't hesitate to slaughter every monster in his way. I think that's a big part of why the Gears of War franchise is as good as it is, and I think it's a big part of why this game is as good as it is. And talking about big beefy men brings me to one of the most important points that I have about the game, which is the weight and feel of everything. When playing this game you feel heavy. You know, it's pretty much like you can actually feel the weight of the suit you're wearing, and I think that's a very important part of this game, because it pretty much makes you feel like you can take on the entire world. You're like a one-man army pretty much, taking on everything and anyone without so much as breaking a sweat. Even though you're not really a one-man army, you're a three-man army, but you get what I mean. And if that isn't the ultimate male fantasy, then I don't know what is. You know you want to be these men, don't deny it. One thing that I really want to talk about as well is the overall atmosphere of the game. You got these very nice looking places, and it's all pretty dark and grim. You got this really cool looking gothic architecture, and you even have these battles happening in the background that you eventually join into. Which honestly is another genius design choice. You know, in other games, whenever you see some kind of battle happening in the background, it's probably just for show, but in this game you actually get to walk into it. And I don't know much about the Warhammer universe myself, but from what I've seen, this game is supposed to perfectly capture the dark atmosphere of the Warhammer 40k universe, so it's apparently very faithful, which is definitely appreciated. You also got this brutal combat system, and this game actually surprised me with how much it's focused on combat. You even have this ability where you get to go full savage mode on these orcs, and it's honestly kind of like Kratos using the Blade of Olympus. You also have a decent amount of cool looking enemies. And one of my favorite things is actually the fact that the orcs call you out whenever they see you. Which again, really sells the idea that you are one of the most badass things in this entire universe. Playing this game is honestly just wanting me to buy a statue of Captain Titus, who is the guy you play as. And by the way, I don't think I've ever seen anyone be more loyal to their job than Titus. This dude would rather die than to betray the Emperor. And I read online that the Space Marines are actually made from the Emperor's DNA, so that makes sense. I don't know much about the Emperor himself. I know he created the Space Marines, and if I'm not mistaken, he looks like this now. And I don't think he's dead, even though he looks very dead. If anyone in the comments would like to clear some things up for me, please feel free to do so. And in summary, this game makes you feel like a walking tank on the battlefield. And it's perfect. I'm gonna enjoy this game until I'm able to play the second one, and I highly recommend you play this game either way. I think it aged really well, I think it's extremely fun, and it's definitely worth playing.